Briar Creek wasn't the kind of place you'd find on a map. Just a handful of old wooden houses, a diner, a bait shop, and the long, winding creek that cut straight through town. Most folks had left years ago when the mills shut down. The ones who stayed had either grown too stubborn or too scared to leave. Scared because of him. I grew up hearing the stories. My grandmother used to sit on the porch at night and whisper about the Lantern Man, a drowned ferryman who still walked the banks of Briar Creek, swinging his old lantern, calling out to the living like he was still ferrying souls across the water. They said, if you saw his light, you weren't supposed to follow it. Didn't matter if it looked like help or like someone calling your name. If you followed the lantern, you'd never come back. I never believed it. Not until the night we lost Tommy. Tommy Clark had been my best friend since we were kids. We worked odd jobs together at the bait shop, skipped school to fish at the creek, and drank cheap beer under the bridge when no one was watching. He was reckless, braver than me, always the one to dare me to go further. It was late October, the fog rolling in thick that night. Tommy and I were walking home from the diner when we saw it, a faint golden light swaying through the trees by the creek. "See that?" he asked, grinning. I squinted. At first I thought it was just some hunter with a lantern, or maybe Old Man Weaver checking his traps. But the way it moved, slow, deliberate, back and forth, it didn't look right. "Probably nothing," I muttered. "Come on, let's go." But Tommy didn't listen. He never did. The light drifted further into the fog, and I swear I heard it, faint as a whisper, someone calling his name. "Tommy!" He froze, then turned to me with wide eyes. "Did you hear that?" "No," I lied. "Sounded like my mom." And before I could stop him, he was moving toward the creek, following the glow. I shouted for him. I grabbed at his jacket sleeve, but he shook me off and slipped into the fog. The last thing I saw was the faint outline of him stepping down the muddy bank, that golden lantern light flickering just ahead. Then nothing. I waited. I shouted until my voice cracked. I ran back into town and banged on every door until Sheriff Crane came out, half-dressed, cussing me for waking the whole street. When I told him what happened, his face went pale. "Boy," he said, "you best pray he just ran off drunk. Because if he followed that light..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The search party dragged the creek for 2 days. They found Tommy's jacket snagged on a branch, but no body. Sheriff said the current probably took him. Everyone nodded, but no one really believed it. In Briar Creek, when someone went missing near the water, the townsfolk already knew the answer. That was 2 years ago. Now I'm back, standing on the same muddy bank where I last saw my friend. I swore I'd never return, but after Grandma passed, I had to settle her old house. The fog hangs low tonight, and the water moves black and slow. And just beyond the trees, I swear I see it again. That faint golden light swaying in the mist. The first night back in Grandma's house, I didn't sleep. The place still smelled like cedar and mothballs, just like when I was a kid. Her rocking chair creaked in the wind, even though nobody sat in it anymore. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tommy's face disappearing into that fog. The sound of his name being whispered, soft and patient, like the creek itself was calling him home. I told myself it was just memory, trauma, that I'd imagined the lantern that night. But around 2 in the morning, the sound came again. Clink, like glass tapping against metal. I sat up, heart pounding. It came from outside near the creek. I opened the curtain a crack and froze. Through the fog, halfway down the bank, the glow swayed, slow, steady, like someone walking with a lantern. The next morning, I went into town. The diner was still running, though only a few old-timers sat hunched over their coffee. Sheriff Crane was there too, reading the paper with bloodshot eyes. When he saw me, his jaw tightened. "You shouldn't be back here, son," he muttered. "I didn't have a choice," I said. "Grandma's house." "I'm not talking about the house." He folded the paper. "You've stirred enough trouble with that night. Best keep your head down, get your affairs in order, and leave before sundown." That's when I noticed the way the old men at the counter had gone silent, all of them staring into their cups, avoiding my eyes, like they knew something. After breakfast, I went to see Mrs. Weaver, the oldest woman in Briar Creek. Folks said she remembered when the mills were still running. She didn't answer the door at first, but when I said my grandma's name, she cracked it open. Her face was pale and thin, eyes clouded like smoked glass. "You saw him, didn't you?" she whispered. I didn't ask who. I just nodded. She let me in, and the air inside was thick with sage and dust. Candles burned low on the table, their wax pooled like melted bones. "He takes the lonely ones," she said. "The lost, the drunk, the heartbroken. He lures them with the light, makes them hear voices they trust. But once you've seen his lantern, once you've heard him call, he doesn't forget you." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" She leaned close, her cracked lips trembling. "He's still calling your name, boy. And he won't stop, till you follow." I left her house shaken. By dusk, I'd decided she was just a crazy old woman, addled with stories. But that night, the knocking started. Not at the front door. At the back window, the one facing the creek. Soft rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. I crept to the kitchen, each step heavy as stone. My breath fogged the glass as I leaned to peek outside. The light swayed again, and this time I heard the voice clear as day. "Daniel!" It was Tommy's voice. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the lamp. My chest felt tight, like my lungs were refusing air. I pressed my palms over my ears, but it didn't matter. The voice seeped through my bones, patient and pleading. "Come on, Danny. It's safe now. Follow the light." The next day, Sheriff Crane found me outside the house, sitting on the porch steps, pale and sleepless. "You heard him, didn't you?" he asked. I didn't answer, but he nodded like he already knew. He sat beside me, hat low, eyes fixed on the fog rolling off the creek. My brother went the same way. Saw the light when he was 15. Swore he heard our mama calling. He never came home. I stared at him. Why doesn't anyone stop it? Why doesn't anyone do something? Crane gave a humorless laugh. "Boy, we tried. Every family here's lost someone. You can't fight what ain't flesh and blood." He turned to me, face hard. "Only thing you can do is leave before it takes you to." That night, I packed a bag. I told myself I'd catch the bus at dawn, settle the house sale from afar. But at 3 in the morning, the lamp in my room flickered out. The air grew cold, and the walls seemed to breathe. Then, from the creek, it came again. "Daniel!" Closer this time. I held my breath. My hands shook as I reached for the window latch, as though something stronger than me was pulling me toward it. The fog outside curled like fingers, parting just enough to show the lantern swinging. And beside it, God help me, I saw Tommy's face, pale, waterlogged, his mouth twisted into something between a smile and a scream. "Come with me," he whispered. And before I knew it, My hand was on the door. The door creaked open like it had been waiting for me. The fog swallowed the porch, rolling in thick and heavy, dampening every sound except the steady swing of the lantern light. My bare feet touched the wooden steps, and each one felt like it might be my last. "Danny!" Tommy's voice again, calm now, coaxing. The glow moved slowly toward the creek, swaying like a heartbeat. I told myself it wasn't real, that I was sleepwalking, hallucinating. But the cold grass beneath my toes was real. The mud pulling at my heels was real. And the more I fought it, the stronger the pull became, like the fog itself had hands dragging me forward. The lantern stopped at the bank, and in the glow, I saw him. Tommy. But it wasn't him. Not really. His skin was gray and stretched, his eyes cloudy with rot. Water dripped from his hair in steady streams. His lips trembled around words that didn't quite sound like his own. "You left me, Danny. Don't leave me again." Behind him, deeper in the fog, more shapes flickered into view. Dozens. Men, women, even children. Their faces pale, mouths moving in unison. Some I recognized from Old Town photos, others I didn't. All of them swaying, whispering, "Join us, join us, join us." The lantern lifted higher, blazing brighter than before. And standing in its heart was something I can never fully describe. It wasn't a man, not anymore. Its body was like smoke-given bone, tall and crooked, its arms too long, its face hidden in a black hood of fog. The lantern swung from one gnarled hand, and every time it swayed, the whispers grew louder. It raised its free hand and pointed at me. The dead surged forward. I stumbled back, my legs heavy as stone, but the ground seemed to tilt toward the creek. My chest tightened. For a moment I thought, this is it. I can't fight it. But then I heard another sound, the sharp crack of a shotgun. The light shattered. The fog recoiled, shrieking. And through it came Sheriff Crane, teeth clenched, pumping the shotgun again. "Run, boy!" he roared. I bolted, the spell breaking just enough for me to feel my body again. My lungs burned as I sprinted for the house, the whispers screeching behind me. Crane fired again and again, the blast tearing holes in the fog, but it was already closing back in. I glanced once over my shoulder and saw the lantern man bending down over him, the glow swallowing him whole. His scream cut short, and then silence. I slammed the door and locked it, though it felt laughable against something like that. My hands shook so bad I could barely hold the latch. The fog pressed against the windows, curling through the cracks, filling the air with whispers. For hours, maybe minutes, maybe years, I crouched in the corner, rocking like Grandma's old chair. At some point, I must have blacked out. When I woke, sunlight streamed through the curtains. The fog was gone. The house was quiet, but the porch steps were wet with muddy footprints, leading all the way to my door. I left Briar Creek that morning. I didn't even pack. The house, the land, everything. It can rot. I drove until the gas ran out, then kept going with borrowed wheels. That was 10 years ago. I've never gone back. Never will. But some nights, when the world is quiet, I swear I still hear it. The faint clink of glass against metal. The slow, steady swing of a lantern in the fog. And a voice, patient as ever, calling my name. "Danny?" I wasn't planning on stopping in Pinewood. It was the kind of town you only saw by accident. A few gas stations, a diner with a flickering neon sign, and an old motel leaning into the highway like it had been forgotten for decades. I'd been driving 12 hours straight, my eyelids like lead weights, and when I saw the sign that read Pinewood Inn, vacancy, I figured it was better than falling asleep behind the wheel. The inn sat at the edge of town, a squat building with peeling green paint and a sign so faded it was barely legible. A single bulb buzzed above the office door. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old coffee. Behind the counter sat a man in his 60s with sunken cheeks and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His name tag read, Earl. "Need a room?" he asked, his voice rasping like dry leaves. "Yeah, just for the night." He slid the ledger toward me. I wrote down my name, paid cash. He reached behind him, grabbed a tarnished brass key, and hesitated. "Room 7, he said finally, pushing it across the counter. The brass tag clinked against the wood. I picked it up. "Guessing you're not full tonight?" Earl's smile thinned. "Never are." I glanced at the row of hooks behind him. Each had a key hanging except one. The hook labeled Room 6 was empty. "Room 6 taken?" I asked, trying to make small talk. His eyes flicked to the hook, then back to me. "Ain't no Room 6. I raised an eyebrow. "It's right there on the rack." "Must be a mistake," he muttered. "We don't rent Room 6. Ever." He turned the ledger toward himself, as if that closed the conversation. My room was at the far end, the curtains thin, the carpet stained with years of use. It was shabby, but serviceable. I set my bag down, flopped onto the creaking bed, and was out before I even had the chance to think about Earl's strange reaction. I woke around midnight, not because of a sound, but because of the silence. Motels always had noise, cars on the highway, neighbors through thin walls, buzzing air conditioners. But here, there was nothing, just a thick, heavy stillness pressing against my ears. I sat up, uneasy. And that's when I saw it, the door across the lot, the door with the crooked number 6 nailed above it. I froze. Earl had insisted it didn't exist, but there it was, plain as day or night. A pale yellow glow leaked from the crack beneath the door, like someone had left the light on. My heart thudded. I told myself not to care, not to get involved, but curiosity, the kind that eats at you, pushed me out of bed. The night air was cold, smelling faintly of rain. My bare feet patted across the cracked asphalt as I approached the door. The glow seemed to pulse brighter the closer I got, like it was aware of me. I reached for the knob and stopped. From inside, I heard it, a sound that curdled my blood. Not voices, not music, but the steady scraping of something against the walls. Like nails, dozens of them. Then, softly at first, then louder, came a whisper. "Don't look in." I spun around. The lot was empty. The whisper hadn't come from outside. It had come from inside Room 6. I should have walked away. I should have gone back to bed. But my hand was already on the knob, twisting before I could stop myself. The door opened. The glow spilled out, blinding for a moment. And when my eyes adjusted, my stomach dropped. The room was wrong. It wasn't a shabby motel space with a bed and dresser. It was bigger, much bigger. The walls stretched too far back, the ceiling arched higher than the building should allow. Every surface was covered in deep scratches, gouged as if hundreds of hands had clawed at them over years. And standing in the middle, bathed in that sickly light, was a suitcase. Old leather, worn. The initials CH burned into the side. The lid was slightly open. Something inside shifted. And then, from behind me, Earl's voice barked, "Close the damn door! Close it!" Earl's voice thundered. But before I could react, he was already there, shoving past me with a surprising strength for a man his age. He slammed the door to Room 6 shut, nearly catching my hand in the process. I stumbled back, heart hammering. "What the hell was that?" Earl locked the knob, breathing hard, his face pale in the glow of the hallway light. For the first time since I'd met him, his mask of calm had cracked. "You shouldn't have opened it," he rasped. "Nobody should ever open it." I started, but he cut me off with a glare sharp enough to shut me up. "You didn't see anything," he snapped. "That room doesn't exist. You hear me? You didn't see a damn thing." He grabbed my arm, squeezing harder than he needed to. His fingers were cold, clammy. "Stay in your room. Keep your head down. Don't ask questions. If you value your life." And just like that, he stormed off into the night, leaving me standing alone in front of the door to a room that wasn't supposed to exist. I tried to sleep after that. God knows I tried. But my mind kept circling back to what I'd seen. The gouged walls, the suitcase, the faint scraping sounds that seemed to burrow into my skull even now. Around 3 a.m., I gave up. Sleep wasn't happening. I pulled on my jacket and stepped outside to clear my head. The lot was empty, silent, except the door to room 6 was open again. Just a crack, but enough to let that pale glow seep out, painting a crooked line across the asphalt. "Nope," I muttered to myself, "not doing this again." But my feet betrayed me, carrying me toward it like I was tied to invisible strings. Every step closer, my chest grew tighter, like the air itself was pressing down on me. The glow pulsed. The suitcase was still there, sitting dead center, as though it had been waiting. The lid was wider this time, and something was inside. I couldn't see clearly, but the shape shifted, slow, deliberate, like breathing. My throat went dry. That's when I noticed the smell. Copper. Old, sour, metallic. Blood. The scraping came again, louder now, like 1,000 fingernails clawing from inside the walls. And then the whisper followed, curling through the room like smoke. "Help us!" I staggered back, nearly tripping over my own feet. My instinct screamed to run. But another voice, the one that had gotten me into this mess in the first place, whispered that maybe, just maybe, someone really was trapped in there. I leaned closer. The suitcase snapped shut, so loud it echoed through the lot. I yelped, stumbling back again, my pulse jackhammering. And before I could make sense of it, the door slammed shut too, rattling in its frame. When I turned, Earl was there again. But this time, he wasn't angry. He looked broken. "You don't get it," he whispered, voice trembling. "You think you saw a room? You think you saw a suitcase? But what you really saw was a crack in the floorboards of hell. And once it sees you back, there ain't no going home." My stomach dropped. "What's in there?" Earl's eyes glistened. For a second, I thought he might cry. "My wife," he said. The words hit me harder than anything else could have. His wife? In that thing? He lit a cigarette with shaking hands, the flame briefly illuminating the deep lines carved into his face. It was 23 years ago. She checked someone into room 6, back before we knew better. A salesman. Nice fella. Never checked out. Just vanished. We thought he skipped town until the police found his suitcase. Same one you saw tonight. The initials. CH, I said. Earl nodded grimly. Carl Hensley. Wife tried to clean the room the next morning. She never came back out. Cops tore the place apart. Couldn't find her. Couldn't find him. Just scratches. Always scratches. The ember of his cigarette flared as he took a long drag. I've kept that room locked ever since, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes it opens, calls to people. And if you're unlucky enough to answer, you're part of it too. I shook my head, refusing to believe it. That's impossible. Rooms don't just eat people. He let out a dry laugh that sounded more like a cough. Tell that to the families who came asking about their kids. The drifters who checked in and never left. You think I don't keep count? His eyes burned into mine. That room feeds, always hungry, always waiting. A chill crawled up my spine. Why don't you burn the place down? You think I haven't tried? He snapped. The fire won't touch it. The walls scream when the flames get close, and then it's like the fire just dies. Like it don't want to offend the thing living inside. I stared at the closed door of room 6. The glow had faded, but I could still feel it, like a heartbeat pulsing through the wood. So what now? I asked quietly. Earl's face hardened. Now you leave. You get in your car and you drive until you forget this town ever existed. He dropped his cigarette, grinding it into the asphalt with his boot. And if you're smart, you'll never come back, ever. But as I returned to my room, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't leaving. Not yet. Because something inside room 6 knew my name, and I needed to know why. The town of Milford had one rule everyone followed, even the drunkards and the skeptics. When the old schoolhouse bell rang at dusk, you went inside and locked your doors. I learned this the hard way when I first moved there. It was late September, the leaves burning red and orange, the air crisp enough to sting my lungs. I'd inherited my aunt's cottage on the edge of town and thought it would be the perfect retreat from the chaos of city life. A small town, quiet nights, cheap property. What could go wrong? That first evening, I was unpacking boxes when the sound of a bell tolled across the valley. It was strange, low, metallic, almost mournful. The sound seemed to stretch and linger in the air, as though the hills themselves carried it further than they should. I leaned out my window. The streets were empty. Shopkeepers slammed shutters. A man herding his dog practically ran inside, dragging the leash. And then silence. I checked my phone for the time. Exactly 6:59 p.m. Confused, I walked into town the next morning and asked the grocer about it. She froze mid-scan, her hands shaking just enough to rattle the cans she was stacking. "Don't pay it no mind," she said sharply. "Just be in your house when it rings. That's all you need to know." When I pressed, she gave me a look so cold it shut me up. Over the next few days, I noticed the pattern. Every evening, a little before 7, the bell rang. No one spoke of it, but everyone obeyed it. Businesses closed early, kids were ushered home, the town seemed to hold its breath until dawn. On the 4th night, I decided to test it. I stayed outside past the bell. At 6:59, the first toll came, echoing across the rooftops. The sound rolled through me, deep enough to make my ribs vibrate. By the 3rd toll, the air grew colder, unnaturally so. My breath steamed in front of me. The shadows on the street seemed longer than they should be, reaching toward me like fingers. By the 7th toll, the dog across the street began to howl. And then, silence. The street lamps flickered. For the first time since I'd arrived, I felt like the town wasn't empty. Something was watching. A shape appeared at the far end of the road. At first, I thought it was a person, a man tall and thin. But as he moved closer, I realized his arms were too long, dragging slightly against the ground. His head tilted unnaturally, like it was straining under its own weight. I panicked, fumbling for my keys. By the time I slammed the door shut, he was halfway down the block. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I confronted the only person I thought might give me answers. Father Collins, the town's priest. He was an old man with a voice like gravel and eyes that had seen too much. When I asked about the bell, he didn't look surprised, just tired. It started in 1923, he said, pouring me a cup of bitter black coffee. The schoolhouse burned down, you see. They said it was an accident, faulty wiring. But the truth was uglier. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. 6 children died in that fire. Their teacher locked the doors from the inside. Thought she could keep them safe until help came. By the time the fire brigade broke through, it was too late. He paused, his hands trembling. The townsfolk tore that teacher apart with their bare hands. Said she killed them on purpose. The bell in the tower, it tolled during the fire, even as the building crumbled, and it hasn't stopped since I shivered. So what happens if you're outside when it rings? He looked me dead in the eyes. You meet them. By now, I should have been smart enough to listen. But curiosity is poison, and I was already infected. I needed proof. On the 8th night, I set up my camera facing the street. Tripod, full battery, infrared mode. I locked the door and sat by the window, recording everything. The bell rang at 6:59. My camera caught the street emptying, the lights flickering. And then, it caught them. Shapes. Dozens of them. Children, small and twisted, their faces pale as ash. Their eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the street lamps like animal eyes. They crawled from the gutters, from the shadows of trees, from the cracks in the schoolyard fence. And leading them was the tall figure I'd seen before, dragging those impossibly long arms. The tape ended when one of the children turned and stared directly into the lens. The screen went black. When I played it back in the morning, the footage was gone. The file name remained, but the video was pure static. I couldn't let it go. The townsfolk avoided me now, whispering behind my back. Someone scratched the word "leave" into the hood of my car. But I was stubborn, foolish. On the 14th night, I made my choice. I would go to the schoolhouse. I would see the bell up close. The building stood on a hill at the edge of town, half collapsed, choked with ivy. The tower loomed above it, the bell hanging crooked, black with soot. I stepped inside just as the first toll rang. The air grew heavy, pressing down on me. My flashlight flickered. The smell of burned wood filled my nostrils. And then I heard them, children laughing, a classroom in session, chalk squeaking on a board. I stumbled into the main hall, and the sound grew louder, overlapping, a cacophony of lessons and screams. In the corner, the tall figure waited. His arms stretched to impossible lengths, his head cocked unnaturally. He opened his mouth, and the sound that came out was the bell. The walls pulsed with firelight. For a heartbeat, I saw them. 6 children, their faces blistered, their eyes hollow. They reached for me, whispering in unison, "Stay with us." The figure stepped closer, and I realized he wasn't the teacher. He was something older, something wearing her guilt like a mask. The children were bound to him, trapped in his shadow. The bell tolled again, and my vision blurred. My body felt heavy, sinking, as though the floor were swallowing me whole. The last thing I saw before the darkness closed in was the tower itself, shaking as the bell swung, and beneath it, a 7th shadow, my own, joining theirs. They found my house abandoned the next week. My car was still parked out front, my belongings unpacked, half a cup of coffee cold on the counter. The townsfolk didn't ask questions. When the bell rang at dusk, they locked their doors as they always had. And if anyone looked closely at the schoolyard fence, they might notice a new shadow in the lineup of figures waiting for the next toll. But no one ever looked too closely. Because in Milford, everyone already knew the rule. When the bell rings, you hide. Always.
So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button so you never miss a new upload when it drops. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.